There are lots of people here. Thank you all so much for coming. It's really, really fantastic you're all here, and I hope you'll find it a very useful hour. So what I wanted to do, I think we'll kick off, is to introduce you to Marc Crothall, who is the Chief Executive of the Scottish Tourism Alliance. He has a wealth of experience in the industry. He started in 2012, and during the time he's led the organization to becoming acknowledged as one of the strongest representative trade bodies in the UK. Marc chaired the National Strategy Steering Group that was which was charged with developing and overseeing Scotland's future tourism strategy, Scotland Outlook 2030. And he's been so involved in the industry, and we're very, very grateful for him to be here to really try and give us an overview of what's happening in the industry. There are a few more people just arriving, so I'm just going to admit them. Adam, can you keep an eye on the room and let people in when they arrive, please?
Yeah, no problem.
Marc,
if you want to take it away, and then we'll get on to any questions afterwards, and then we'll go to Patrick. So on you go, Marc.
Sure. Okay. Great. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. We'll freelance it then. Here we go. Yeah, delighted to be on the call, and great to see so many of you on the call as well. Some of you I know well, and I think some of you I've seen very at our conference, and in some cases others not so long after that as well. As Cassie said, I'm the Chief Executive of the Scottish Tourism Alliance. Have been in that role since 2012, but have prior to that 35 years of actual industry operation across different parts of the globe, hotels, consultants, events, festivals, and other types of sort of accommodation as well. And so I know and can empathise what it's like as a business operator when it comes to the more challenging times of trying to get people into beds in the depth of winter in rural parts of the country. Alternatively, what it's like when you're running on a high and there's big events and opportunities to explore. But most recently, in addition to the role that I fill with the Scottish Tourism Alliance, I've also been invited to co-chair the newly formed Tourism and Hospitality Industry Leadership Group alongside the Minister, that will have its first meeting on Wednesday of this week, actually. And that group will be is charged with championing the future delivery of Scotland Outlook 2030, being our national tourism strategy. In the short term, and the ongoing role of the SD, we are committed to, with our sector council colleagues, board and the destination forums, to driving out and trying to represent the best possible to ensure that the current climate and the short to medium term challenges that we have as a sector are best overcome as possible, making strong representation to government, and not just in the UK, and not just in Scotland, but also across the UK. And we also sit as members of the UK Tourism and Council as well. So there is a flavour of what the sort of STA does. We have about 280 organisations under our umbrella of membership, and either directly or indirectly, roughly I think 75–80% of all tourism enterprises across the country are members of ours. I'm delighted to, as I say, have that level of support, and what that gives us is a strong, credible voice when we engage at a senior level. So sit around the Business Economy Working Forum, which convenes fortnightly, is co-chaired by the Director General for the Economy, Louise MacDonald, and has regular representation and presence from, in the current climate, John Swinney, obviously, who's deputing for Kate Forbes, the Finance Secretary. So the other organisations there are CBI, Scottish Chambers of Commerce, FSB, Scotland Food and Drink, Scottish Retail Consortium, Scottish Finance Prize, and the IOD. So a good 9 lead business organisations that much have the same agenda when it comes to business, and wanting tourism to be prosperous and thrive, because it does, as I think everybody has now come to realise, when tourism stops, the whole economy stops, the heartbeat of the nation stops, and therefore it's all the more reason and important that it continues to be invested in, and that we can ride the crest of the wave as we were doing in 2019 before COVID hit. So I don't know, Cassie, whether you're back up with us, but happy to take any questions and things you might want to put my way.
I wanted to ask you was, there's a new group called the ILG, and I wondered whether you could explain to everybody what's involved with that and how it's going to help all our small businesses.
Of course. Well, there are industry leadership groups for each sector of the economy. So, and they've been in existence for a number of years, also across creative industries, space, construction, retail, food and drink. Tourism has been there from the outset, and previously Stephen Leckie, the STA chair, was the representative voice on the ILG, and it's the role of the ILGs are to basically look at coming together to identify how each part of the economy can actually really drive forward the best possible outcomes for the benefit of everyone, and that plays into what is now the government's national strategy for economic transformation, where the main aim is to ensure that Scotland is prosperous, and actually there is a lot of we rid poverty. There is plenty of community wealth. It's there to inspire entrepreneurship, and overall, allow Scotland to become that sort of leading destination where people will want to invest, live and work in. The Tourism and Hospitality Leadership Group, as it's now been renamed and reformed, as I said in my introduction, is there to, the group is 26 in number. This is the transition from STIRG, which was the Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group, into now becoming the group that actually takes ownership of Scotland Outlook 2030, our national strategy, which of course we launched back in March 2020, just before COVID hit. So there's 25 in number. There are 16 colleagues from across the industry. They're there as individuals. They're not there to represent any particular sector or business. They are there because they've been chosen for their strategic insights under their strategic skill set, obviously the breadth of experience that they have to be able to contribute to that longer term, I suppose, strategic aspiration, and help achieve that aspiration of being a world leader in 21st century tourism. And across the strategy itself, it looks very much around, the 4 key priority areas of people. How do we've got, the best workforce, the right workforce? How do we ensure our communities in that people part are included in the tourism piece, and their contributions are massive. The Fair Work agenda, of course, plays heavily into that. Then we have the business angle. So as a second priority, of course, everybody on the call here runs a business, I'm sure, and all want to, you do it for a reason, to make money. And obviously you would want to reinvest in your business and make sure that the proposition that you present is the best possible when it can be. So how do we make sure that that environment is to trade, invest and be prosperous is one that is best placed. Then the place area itself, the destination, the place agenda, we need to ensure that the destinations across Scotland are all as best as presented as they possibly can be, have within them the right makeup that allows and creates the appeal for a visitor want to go to those destinations, and they are able to function as we would want them to for a visitor, so they can enjoy it to the full extent and may well choose to live there. But not just the visitor, of course, we need to attract workforce into those destinations too. And then the fourth area, of course, is experience, and that's everything from the accommodation experience, the food and drink experience, the visitor attraction experience, the end-to-end of the customer journey, which was very much The previous strategy was focused on Tourism Scotland 2020, looking at experiences through history, heritage, culture, through destinations, towns, cities, events, festivals, outdoor adventure, obviously business tourism. Of course, it's not all about leisure. So how do we make sure that those experiences are absolutely robust? All of this is underpinned by the sustainable agenda. So going back to the tourism and hospitality ILG, it is that group that will look to the medium and long term views of the strategy. What should the priority actions be? What should the investment areas be? And make recommendation to government, and obviously bring along hopefully the industry as well as the local authorities and others on the journey.
Well, thank you very much. One thing I suppose that come to mind for me is it's incredible that we've got all these fantastic people helping us and run tourism. But how can we make it easier for the smaller business to actually get some of this information? Because I think from a small business perspective, there are lots of people doing all this work, but what's the best way to communicate that to the smaller businesses?
Well, first and foremost, there's two big portals that exist and have been there for a long time, and I would highly recommend that you plug into them. One is, of course, the Scottish Tourism Alliance newsletter. If you subscribe to our newsletter, which anybody can on this call, it doesn't cost you any money to do so. We produce a twice monthly regular update and a members update as well. And the content that the newsletter carries, of course, is about what's going on. There will be a link as well in that future newsletter to the outputs from the Tourism and Hospitality Industry Leadership Group, and links directly back to Scotland Out 2030. And the link will be to the page that will sit on the visitscotland.org website. And in the case of Visit Scotland, it's the main repository and the main sort of I suppose hosting page for all that's gone on, as it was through Sturg. The Sturg landing page sat there, and the consistency of message is important. So that's the trusted source, I guess, of which the Sturg will feed into. But huge amount of other information that comes through as well. Some excellent news updates that come from our sector council partners, the Association of Self-Caterers, the ASVA newsletter. UK Hospitality put out a regular weekly update or bi-weekly update as well. So there's plenty of news there. So if you're not yet linked or signed up to any of these, then I would do that. And of course, also follow us on social media as well. So that's st_alliance. So we have a Facebook page, LinkedIn page, happily connecting with me as well. So there's communication is the main need. We've seen it is a challenge, and we've seen that in recent weeks and times, as just to the lack of awareness of some of the current changes to regulation, which Patrick will go on and talk about, I'm sure, around the short-term let stuff. But there's a lot of other things that are happening. The deposit return scheme, another very hot topic at the moment, that many businesses who it will directly affect are not even aware of the fact that it comes into force in August of next year. So, but by tuning into these, I suppose, these platforms and signing up to the newsletters, then hopefully we'll do our best to keep you abreast of everything that you need to know. And it doesn't matter what size business you are, whether you're a one-man band or the EICC or SDCC or large destinations.
Brilliant. Well, that's really helpful. I mean, I subscribe to all of them, and we try and send out newsletters every month, which my wonderful team do for me. But there's a wealth of information out there, and I think it's so important that one grabs that information, because it does keep one abreast.
I think what I would say, Cassie, just jumping back in there, everything is so fluid at the moment. There's a lot of information that literally lands and updates almost daily. We saw the rotating doors of UK government and trying to keep abreast of what was going on in that regard. I've had 5 tourism ministers in the UK government in the last 3 months. So not necessarily, they don't obviously impact us, but at the same time, it doesn't help at the pace at which things are changing. So if you keep those platforms, and I think what's also important, your colleagues as well, anyone in your businesses, we're trying to make sure that the news is also to the workforce that are coming into the sector, or working just maybe slightly lower down than the management team, because part of a big industry, and the more people that know what's going on, then obviously the better it is for everyone.
Absolutely. Mark, one other thing I just wondered whether you could just talk a couple of minutes about is Hospitality Industry Trust Scotland. I mean, we've all done the course,
Yep.
but it's so brilliant, and I don't think enough people and businesses know about it. And I know a few people on here have done it, but would you mind just telling the audience about the HIT Scotland?
Yeah, so HIT Scotland are a great partner of the industry. David Cochrane, its chief executive, does exceptional work. I mean, the HIT Scotland itself is there to help people progress their skills and knowledge and advancement, and they do that through raising money by hosting various events across the country, which colleagues attend, and normally good fun, raise huge amounts of money. I think only recently at the Edinburgh lunch a couple of weeks ago, they raised something like £54,000 at that event alone, and all that money is then reinvested into creating scholarships for people in the industry to sign up to, or be awarded or apply to. And the scholarships range from it could be 2 days with a chef, or going off to a business school to do something a bit more advanced and yes, but there's lots of marrying up with experts in industry as well. The recent program of activity that they delivered as a direct result of our recommendations made to the Scottish Government during COVID for protecting the workforce that we have in the tourism, tourism and hospitality talent development program that ran. We were able to secure just shy of £2 million from Scottish Government to frame a set of workshops. David and his team engaging the extraordinary talent training company, and put together a series of modules of online learning for 10 weeks. I think the session were so targeted primarily at supervisory management and then leadership development. It was so successful in the first year it ran, and we've now had 3,500 people go through that program. Our recommendations to Scottish Government as part of the immediate need to help drive recovery is to continue to feed and support initiatives like that, which we can upskill our existing workforce. We have just shy of 40,000 fewer people working in the industry than we did have in 2019, and we need more people, but they're not going to come overnight. So but it's a great organization. It is a charitable organization, but certainly one that's part of the fabric of the industry, and we work very much glove in hand. And it's not, although it's Hospitality Industry Trust, what we saw through the program of the Tourism and Hospitality Talent Program is that it was opened up to anyone working in the sector. So you had groups working together from across all parts of the industry, so you could find yourself in a group with attraction operators, tour guides, people from the marine sector, alongside hoteliers and others. So hugely successful, and one that is recognised as being a success story by the government as well. And going back to the ILG, it's a model that could well translate across into other parts of the working economy.
Fantastic, Mark. Thank you. I mean, I personally found the course life-changing. It was absolutely brilliant, and I know Megan's really enjoyed it, and Adam's done a 3-day course. So if you've got, if any of you are interested in learning more about life and bias and feedback and positive, it's broken down into lots of different sections and was really, really good. I just wondered whether we could quickly ask the audience whether anybody's got any questions for Marc, and before we go on to Patrick, who's going to talk more about the short-term let regulations. Has anybody got any questions they maybe want to put in the chat? Paul has. So
yeah, hi there, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for organising, Cassie, and great to have Marc and Patrick with us. So invaluable at the moment. Just a quick question, Marc. Basically, people come to our accommodation for events or specific exhibitions or tours or theatre or whatever it is. I know we've talked before about maybe having an app where we could connect various local businesses in the tourism industry together. Is that something that the new industry body will be looking at too?
Hi, Paul, and yeah, good to see you last week as well, and thanks always for your support that you give us through your online contributions as well as your in-person contributions. I mean, technology to simulate is something that's very much part of the sort of trends that we know exist out there, and how that future traveller is wanting to engage. There's a great organisation called Travel Tourism, which is a consortia of tech specialists who have come together and are exploring all sorts of tech solutions to try and improve and support business as well. I think you're referring back to the original sort of tease that Doug Lansky gave back at a conference we held 2 years ago around those travel solutions or technology solutions to join up the industry. There's certainly a lot of stuff being looked at still, but I think anybody who doesn't want to embrace technology and use it for all that it can do would be foolish to sort of step aside. But it's getting the right platform, and actually how do you then scale it so everybody's into it. There's lots and lots of apps out there that are doing really good stuff as well. So you know, it sits as one of the conditions for success which behind the priorities of Scotland Outlook 2030 to enable that to achieve our ambition are having right infrastructure, digital, right skills, right marketing, right investment and right policy. So obviously the digital piece is central to that future thinking, and Joshua from the Travel Tech Group is actually one of the individuals who is on the TLG, and I'm sure will be making, you know, and supporting us all the way. And Mark Logan, many of you may have heard or seen. Mark Logan was the chief executive of Skyscanner. Mark is on the National Strategy for Economic Transformation, identified as Scotland's first or the first leading entrepreneur, and championed with driving out that whole sort of technology agenda through the country. So, you know, if it doesn't translate across into tourism and actually find solutions that connect people more efficiently because the traveller will want to do that, I'd be very surprised. So it's yes, on the agenda with the question, but how we deliver it and how it all comes together at this moment in time remains to be seen, but it's got to be right, and the infrastructure has to be there to support everybody.
great, thank you, Marc, and thank you, Paul, for that excellent question. I think we'll pass on to Patrick now because we're halfway through, and I know Patrick is going to share a presentation with us all about the regulations. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. If we can't answer them now, we will answer them. We'll save the chat and we'll come back to you afterwards. But thank you so much, Patrick. We really appreciate you coming to talk to everyone.
Not at all. Thank you, Cassie, for inviting me on. Today, talking about short-term regulations, which I've been involved in for quite some time. I'm the Industry Development Manager for Visit Scotland. So today, we just don't have the time to cover all the detail in terms of the regulations. What I really want to get across are some of the key points, but more importantly, what support is out there to help you make that the application that you might have to do. So I'll cover off some key points as well. We are going to cover some questions. We asked you to give me some questions beforehand, so I'll try and give you some answers to those, as well as the ones that might come in over chat. So in very broad terms, there's the points that I wanted to cover. Who needs to apply? So it's pretty much it's everyone in Scotland, so it covers all 32 local authorities. And if you do let out accommodation on short term, then it's likely that this regulation will cover you. Now on our, and I'll be referencing visitscotland.org, I'll give you a quick look at it. We have a section specifically for short-term let regulation. And there is a link there to a very useful tool to actually assess whether short-term let regulation does include your business. So that's one to look for. In terms of the timescales, it was the legislation was brought into act in January. From October the 1st of this year, all new operators had to apply for a license before they could open to take bookings or deposits. From April the 1st of 2023, if you are an existing operator, by then you need to have applied. So I think that's the important thing to get across. So what I would be in terms of advice is that last month of March is not when you need to be making that application, because it's not about getting that sent in on the 30th of March. There's the councils need to have sight, they need to have accepted your application. So make sure you give yourself time to get your application in plenty of time. In terms of licenses type, there's a home sharing and there's home letting, and there is a mix of that. Home sharing, home letting covers fundamentally the bed and breakfast sector, the guest house sector, and the sort of Airbnb style let of your home. And there is secondary let, which is the fourth type of license. There are exemptions. I said I'd mentioned we've tried to explain those a little bit more clearly on visitscotland.org. I'm just going to give you a quick sort of view of the page just now as to what it looks like. I'll scroll to the top first. So it's under supporting your business, and it's down here in short-term lets legislation. So in here, we've sort of tried to make it quite easy for you to get to particular parts. So there's particular questions that you've got, you can scroll to. And I guess the one thing I want to just sort of, so that's the link I mentioned earlier that allows you to sort of check to see if your business is likely to be involved in. We've tried to describe the types of business. It's not exhaustive, but we've tried to describe the types of business that the regulations cover. For those of you that are interested in particular exclusions, we've also tried to listen. Again, it's not exhaustive, but again, gives you an idea of instances when you might be excluded from. So I'll come back and reference that page again through my presentation. So I've talked about exemptions. There are probably less of interest to you temporary licenses, which we see perhaps as an opportunity if you're looking for a new license. If you apply for a temporary license, it may, but it's unproven, may speed up the application process, because once you have a temporary license, you can begin operating for up to 6 weeks. And if you've applied for a full license, you can continue to operate under a temporary license until such time as a full license is determined. Temporary exemptions are primarily of interest to those who are, if they're in an area where events are happening and they do on a regular basis offer out their homes for a very short period. Again, it's 6 weeks. So there will be an opportunity to have a temporary exemption from the regulations. One thing I would stress is that wherever within your regulations, make sure you have a look at your own terms and conditions to make sure that as you are having your license determined, when you do eventually get your license determined, that you provide for any issues in terms of getting that license or not, and its implications on booking. So do have a look at that and make sure that you have that cover in your terms and conditions just now. So I think someone within the questions we've got have asked, is there health and safety elements to the legislation? And I think that's fundamentally what the legislation is trying to cover. There are quite a few: fire safety, electrical safety, the whole list is there. It's also on visitscotland.org. What I would say to you in terms of just in terms of the operations of that, they each have different timescales, so you need to be mindful of when they run out and to ensure that you're continuing to have them as live positive in terms of all of those requirements. And there are also, across the Scottish Government, have allowed the 32 different local authorities to look at their own plans and planning development plans to add in any additional conditions. And at the moment, we're having a look at all of those to ask if there's any anomalies, if there's any inconsistencies, to ask for the local authorities to explain them. But what I would suggest to you is that all of you have a look at your local authorities' pages on their website to check if there are additional conditions for your local area, to make sure that you look to adhere to them. Some in terms of who applies for the license. So you as an owner can apply. You can ask if you do have someone who operates your business, they can apply, or you can get a solicitor or agency to apply. But what is really important is that no matter who applies, all owners, directors, and partners' details need to be in the application. If you have a manager or an operator that's not the owner, you need to make sure that their details. Likewise, if you're using an agent, all of their directors' details need to be included in the application. So that's a point that might mean quite a bit of work for those who use third parties to manage their business. In terms of the other point to make out is that in terms of notice, there is a need, once you've made your application, that you immediately display on or near to the public the fact that you have made an application. You need to do that for 21 days. And you then need to fill out a confirmation of compliance with having had that notice up for the 21 days. There are templates for those on most of the local authority sites, and the Scottish Government's guidelines also have templates that you can use for that site notice and the certificate of compliance. The public then have, from that first day of you posting the notice, 28 days to make a complaint per se, or an objection on that application, and the local authorities will take a view then in terms of whether it's a valid objection or not. When you do get your license, there is a stipulation that everywhere that you advertise, you then must put your license number. You must also show your maximum occupancy, but also where it applies, and then just check that. It's not applicable to everyone that's included in the regulation, but where it applies, you must also show your energy performance certificate as well. So that needs to be on online advertising and all offline advertising. So anywhere where you are telling people about your business, you need to show those details. One thing I really want to put across to you, we understand, Visit Scotland understands that this is very new to industry. It is because it's 32 different local authorities. The Scottish Government is also their housing department are implementing that. We've set up an industry advisory group, which effectively is working with all of the associations which are listed there on the right-hand side. And what we're trying to do is raise any concerns by you industry to Scottish Government, get clarifications on those, and then publish those on the page on visitscotland.org, and also make sure that you are signposted properly to the best advice. So if you do have something that you want to raise, please utilize our email address, customer.services@visitscotland.com. But what we want to get across is that your views, your concerns are channeled through your associations. So if you're not a member of any of these associations, I would suggest it's and the regulations impact on you. I think it's important that you are involved with them, so because they can then raise your question and get clarifications for you on your behalf from Scottish Government or from your individual local authorities. And this is a list of our sort of support. I think what I also I'll give you a quick view again in terms of the short-term license page on .org. Let me see what else I wanted to cover. Here you'll see a link through to the guidance from Scottish Government. That's the first one is for hosts and operators. That's useful for you to fully understand what's to do. What we are saying is right now, the thing you really need to do is get acting on the mandatory conditions, and we've got a downloadable PDF or a downloadable spreadsheet that you can sort of say, have I got this? What when have I booked in for a someone to do my gas certification, for example? So gives you a plan, and one that I would say to you that you should get working on as soon as possible. We've got also the frequently asked questions. So again, this is the area that we populate as we pick up questions that we feel aren't fully clarified, and we can, once we get those clarifications either from Scottish Government or local authorities, we'll add to here. So I'll stop sharing now, and I'll attempt to sort of answer some of the questions. I could see some questions coming in. Let me see, what have I done now?
I've got a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
One of the first ones is, which has come up several times, is how is it going to be policed? How?
Yeah, fundamentally, the local authorities have been told to do it on a risk base, the budgeting for the implementation of short-term licensing. So many, but not all, of the councils plan to do a spot checks, i.e. that they will take a percentage of the total applications and visit and physically check all of the documentation. Each of the applications will need, in the main, to physically supply a certificate or evidence of the fact that they have that they're adhering to the mandatory questions.
Okay, and another question that's come through is, will each premises be individually inspected, or will it be random?
Which is basically exactly what I've said, is that each council is taking a different view in terms of the cost of visiting, and there are some who will take a percentage of the total applications and will visit. Some councils aren't taking that view and are basically taking it on a risk base. Okay,
fantastic. So I've got some other questions here. I'm just gonna find them. So sorry, now it's typical. I can't find the document.
I'll just answer some of the ones there. There was what sort of fines will be applicable for non-compliance. There's, at the moment, the maximum fine is, I believe, £2,500. But as far as I know, there is a housing bill which has been moved through Parliament, which will significantly increase the level of fines that could be applied.
Okay, so we've got a question there from Juliet Thompson, who's a lovely client of ours, and she's in the Scottish Borders, and the Scottish Borders Council don't have an application process yet. So what do you do then?
The Scottish Government indicated to the local authorities that every one of the local authorities should have a process in place from the 1st of October. What we do know is that out of the 32, 28 have a process in place. I don't know individually in terms of those, so clearly that of the 5, the Scottish Borders are one of those 5. What I do know is that all have started the process either to get the consultation process and are now looking to sign off committee, but I don't have a timeline, I'm afraid, in terms of when Borders will have theirs ready.
Oh, well, Juliet, hopefully, I'm sure they'll all be working hard to get it out as soon as possible, because I think they'll be getting lots and lots of emails and phone calls. So let's hope that comes out soon. So we've got a question, next question's from Suzanne Harrison. What happens if you're an established business with a positive record and for some reason you're not granted a license? What compensation is available for bookings that need to be cancelled if we cannot operate? It's a very good question.
It's a very challenging one. It's one that as a good operator that you've been around in the past, and I would, the view I would take is that you should satisfy the mandatory conditions and you are likely to get a license. I think the point I made earlier in my presentation is that what you should do is write into your terms and conditions the proviso that in case that you don't get licensed, so that you are covered for any future bookings.
Okay, that's really good advice. Thank you, Patrick. And now we've got another question from Gordon in Granton-on-Spey. Hi, Gordon. The question is Patrick aware of the confusion caused by the possibly unlawful interpretation by the Scottish Government of the hotel's exclusion from short-term let with respect to use class 7 guest houses, and what is Visit Scotland doing about it? That's a difficult question.
Yes, well, we have through the industry advisory group, we have been very aware of some areas where there was greater clarification required, and this is one particular one that we have raised more than once with Scottish Government. I now believe that a letter which had been sent from the Scottish Guest Houses and B&B Alliance to the Minister has been answered directly to that association, and that answer, which sought to clarify that question about hotels or whether guest houses were included if they were in use class 7, was meant to be clarified on that letter, and that's also been passed on to all the local authorities to act on. What I don't have at this point in time is whether there are at least a couple of local authorities who are taking a different view on inclusion under use class 7. What I don't have at this point in time is whether that they have taken a different stance. What I would suggest then, to anyone who is aware of the fact that their local authority has taken a different stance as to whether guest houses are included if they are use class 7, that they should check with them on a regular basis.
Okay, and I think a lot of these questions will come out the woodwork, won't they? As the regulations come into force, and
yes, and it's what we're trying to surface and answer on visitscotland.org. So we will post those as regularly as we have that information.
Brilliant. So we've got another question from Abida, who represents self-catering properties in Stirling, and she says the planning departments and licensing departments do not seem to be speaking to each other. They cannot get a definitive answer from the local councils whether we should be applying, so whether we should be applying for planning permission or a certificate of lawfulness. What happens if the council has not given us a license number by the 31st of March? because they are still processing applications.
Wow. So there's a lot in that. So in terms of when you apply, when you make your application for a short-term license as an existing operator, the local authority will has been said to give you a provisional license number. So there is little work in that in terms of being able to respond and give you and attach a provisional license number to you. What is unknown as to how long it will take them to run through all of the applications that they have. What we do know is that they have up until July the 1st, 2024, before they need to have all licensing applications determined by.
Wow. Okay.
So July 1st, 2024, after that, it will be illegal to have not a license and operate.
Okay. Okay. Well, that thank you. Thank you so much for answering all these questions so well. Paul has raised his hand, so perhaps Paul, would you like to unmute yourself? And I don't know whether he meant to raise a hand.
I did, yeah. Thanks, Cassie. Yeah, Patrick, great. Thanks for doing this today. Been really helpful, brought it all together in one place, which is great. I'm totally supportive of this legislation coming in, and I think we all should be, because why would we not want our businesses to be recognised professionally? And actually, I think we need to be positive about it, and it will actually support us to get many more guests, because we will have the right ticks, if that's the right phrase. One of the things that's interesting for me is people are very negative about it in Edinburgh because of the sort of extra steps Edinburgh Council are taking. But if people are doing home sharing like what we do, and we only have 3 bedrooms that we share, it now means we have to do various additional bits of legislation and conform. So for instance, up until now, as I've understood it, and please someone on the call correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't had to do the food safety or the fire safety or the, any of these things, because we only had 3 suites, but now we'll have to go ahead and do that. So yeah, as Veronica says, it's costing a fortune to get all these things done. But actually, I think it's a really good step forward for us as a Scottish tourism.
And I totally agree with you, Paul. I know it has caused a huge amount of anxiety across the industry, but there are many unscrupulous traders out there who are not necessarily worried about their guests, and they might not do the smoke detectors and the pat testing, and there's a lot of work involved. But once you've done it and you've diarised in your diary when they renew, which is what Patrick was saying, it's like, I mean, when we ran our B&B, we turned it into an HMO. We turned it in an HMO license, and that was pretty stressful because there lots of different, but once you get your head around it, and if you're organized and you've got your dates in your diary of when they renew, then it'll become easier.
And that is the key about the unscrupulous operators, because many times I have guests that book with us to because they've gone to an Airbnb or whatever, booking.com, and it's horrible what they're arriving at, and it's not safe and it's dirty, and that's not the first impression we want people to get when they come to visit us in Scotland. So I think it should raise the standards. So that's great, Gordon. Thanks for sharing that. So I think I do conform, but I will be going through it anyway.
So I've got another question for you, Patrick, from Colin Miller. Do we need to have everything done, i.e. our certificates in place prior to applying for the licence, or can we apply for a temporary licence just now? I think that's a really good question, Colin.
No, you need to have everything in place, and that's why I said to you, you need to get cracking on with making sure you've got your gas certificates, your EICR, your PAT test. There is some councils who are giving a little bit of leeway because it may be difficult to get tradesmen. I can think some issues on the islands, for example, where it's pretty challenging. But in the main, they're looking for those mandatory conditions to be in place before you apply. Otherwise, they will deem the application not competent.
And there's another thing that I asked a local electrician about, who's a trusted electrician, because again, you can get, so there's a governing body called the EIC, which I will get Megan to share with you all. And it's worth looking to check that electrician is actually a member of the governing body, because that'll give you peace of mind that you're not getting somebody along who's might, because I imagine there will be people profiteering from this as well, Patrick, wouldn't you agree?
I think I wouldn't wish to say that would be the case, but it's always better working with someone who knows what they're about. And again, the associations provide such great advice. That could cut out the need for consultants, which yeah.
I got a question from Veronica, who is a client in Morayshire of ours. She's got a beautiful home called Westfield House. She's asked really about helping with the form filling. Is there any help for people who get very anxious about the form filling, because it is quite onerous?
Yeah, I guess it is in that sense. It's about sort of working out what is really needed, and I think that element of if you work out getting the mandatory conditions sorted, you should adhere. But I'm not aware, without actually having to commercially pay for it, for someone to walk you through the form filling. But I would. It is important you get it right. That's the point. So I think it's a judgment you should make if you really feel it's beyond what you would want to do. I guess, yeah, I'm sort of again, if for a bed and breakfast, yeah, I'm trying to think of. I was thinking, from a self-catering, it is possible for an agency, for example, to do the application, but you most likely find that as a bed and breakfast, you won't have that support. So unfortunately, it's about working through it, but not panicking, because once you get the mandatory stuff correct, then the application form should be intuitive enough for you to work through it in that respect. We've said right from the start that that sort of detail, it shouldn't be onerous.
Thank you, Patrick. And Veronica, we will help us in any way we can if you get stuck. So, just feel free to contact any of us and the team. And I got another good question from Juliet Thompson in the Scottish Borders, again asking, how long are the licenses valid for?
The norm is for 3 years.
Okay, so that's really a positive thing, isn't it? That once every 3 years. I mean, if it'd been once every year, it would be very alarming. But once every 3 years, I think, once it's done, it's sort of like, all these horrible jobs we have on our to-do list, they never seem to go away. But, they will go away, and you will sort out these licenses.
The hope is that once you've had your first license, some councils will then give even longer duration, but we haven't got sight of that. So, and I think, as you said, Cassie, it's keeping on top of the mandatory conditions, just diarising them in as to when you need to be thinking about getting the next iteration of it checked.
Yeah, brilliant. So we've got another 2 or 3 minutes, but I mean, it's been an incredibly useful hour. Thank you so much, Patrick and Mark. And I hope
would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to put Paul's little hand signal, and my typing's gone a bit funny.
Hi, Jamie.
Going through the process. Good luck, everyone. I've got, when you go down to the fire stuff, so we rent out big houses. Well, they're not all big, but they're private houses nearly that people don't use. So when they're vacated, which is most of the time, we rent them out for holiday lets. And there's one amongst one quite detailed requirement. For example, it says, where is it? Doors and exits. Do all final exit doors, including the main entrance used by guests, open from the inside without use of a key? Now, I don't want to get into all the details. Should I be worried about that level of detail? Because I don't think anyone who stays in a home has final exit doors that don't have, everyone locks their door at night. So should I be worried about little detailed stuff like that? Is that going to trip me up, or is it just a kind of just to cover everything as long as we're generally fire compliant?
Yeah, okay, that's challenging to respond to that in such a way that the fire safety have said they are very available to have a conversation with anyone who's got some concerns, and that's what I would suggest. Just go over those little pieces rather than because I guess getting it right first time is a whole lot better than backwards and forwards. Yeah.
Sorry, a secondary question is that's one. If there is a process by which, if they spot emissions, they pass it back to you. It's not.
I think that, as I understand it, they will determine whether it's competent. In other words, it's fully filled out, and they then send back for it to be reapplied. But what you need to be mindful of is if you're close to the 1st of April, you may fall into difficulty if it's going backwards and forwards.
No, Christmas deadline for sure.
Just to come in on that, Jamie. So we have sprinklers in every suite. We only have 3 suites, but every door, because of the fire regs, has a turning button so you can get out, including the front door downstairs. It's an easy lock to fit on your main front door, so I wouldn't worry that's a big expense.
Okay, so you think, right, okay.
Patrick, could you please share the link so we can all get cracking? The one you were posting.
Yep,
that's
totally. I'll do that right now.
Thing, and we can just start working through that checklist. If anyone needs an electrician to do PAT testing in Edinburgh, I've just engaged one while we've been on this call.
Oh, well done. That's excellent. So we're 12 o'clock.
I've just put it into chat if you want to copy and paste it.
Amazing. Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome, Paul.
Megan and Adam, can we just save that chat, and then what we'll make sure is we'll send the recording to everyone who wasn't able to come this morning, and the recording will be up on our website at privatehousedays.com on the videos page. So yeah, really grateful, Patrick. That was a fantastic hour, and to you, Mark. I think Mark might have left, but yeah, I hope you all have a good run up to the Christmas, and that you get through these horrid regular. Here's Mark. Hi Mark again. Yeah, just to say thank you so much for coming, and I will be sharing this far and wide, and hopefully we'll get lots of views on it. It'll be on our YouTube channel as well. And Mark's very sorry,
Cassie, I would just say thanks very much for the invitation, and I suppose a message from me, and I think it's become clear on the call that there's a lot of people who don't know about what's going on out there, and there is an awful lot going on. And I appreciate it's extremely difficult to keep abreast with things. So I would say, please do connect and stay tuned to all of the right platforms that are out there, sharing the news as best we can. The short-term let thing is a really serious area for the industry that you're operating in, and it mustn't be taken lightly. It's difficult to navigate for some, but there is, there's support out there to do it. And, I referred to the deposit return scheme as well, another regulation that's likely to be, will be applied and will affect your business in the early parts of, in the August of next year as well. So stay abreast of what's going on, and certainly the associations, and obviously linked back through to visitscotland.org. We're all here to support and help you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you, Patrick. And
You're welcome.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
for all
inviting
of
me.
your attendees, Paul and Veronica, everyone who came. Really grateful for your time, and we'll be in touch.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.